Well, you guys, late 2024 going into current has been a very tough time for a former Forbes billionaire, Sean P. Diddy Combs, after he foolishly made the wrong decision not to settle out of court with Cassie Ventura. Complaints came out of the woodworks. Once the complaint came out of the woodworks, what happened? The feds, that's my imitation of the feds sniffing. The feds started sniffing around. It ultimately led to Sean Combs having two of his mansions actually searched. A gang of video evidence, digital evidence was taken out. And now we find ourselves here, day one of the trial of Sean Diddy Combs. And it's all about the jury selection. I'm Marcus. I'm a licensed attorney. I've been doing this for over 15 years. Defense, prosecution, criminal investigation, street crimes, white collar crimes, you name it, your boy's been involved in it from a legal perspective, not actually committing crimes. In any event, if you get some value out of this video, I invite you to subscribe, like, share, comment. First of all, let me lay the foundation for what we're going to do. We're going to talk about why jury selection is important. We're going to talk about why this jury selection is more difficult than what you would see in your typical case. We're going to read an article that talks about the background, and then we are going to look at the questions that were asked by the judge of the jury. We're going to talk about why certain questions were asked, what's the legal significance of those. Now, and if you stay tuned all the way to the end of this video, I'm going to give you my take on kind of how I think this is going to play out. Now, remember, Sean Combs is facing a litany of charges. The most important one, or the most severe one, is the RICO charge, racketeering. In order to prove that, we have to prove, or the government has to prove, two underlying criminal offense to be able to prove this RICO charge. Now, this could be arson, it could be sex trafficking, it could be transportation for the furtherance of prostitution. But they have to prove two underlying crimes to be able to prove the racketeering, using a criminal organizations to further criminal activity. More importantly, in this case, or I guess I would say that criminal activity is described as his sexual proclivities for having his freak offs and paying to have people busted open for a real ninja. Now, we're going to talk about why is voir dire important. Essentially, that's just a term to ask jurors questions so you can determine who is going to be a good juror and who is going to be a trash juror. Some jurors you can eliminate without cause, some jurors you can eliminate with cause based on how they respond to certain questions or something in their background that makes you look as a defense attorney and say, I'm not going to rock with this person. Now, it's different at different levels of government. In states, it varies, but some states allow for the attorneys to ask the questions of the jury. In the feds, the judge asks the questions, but those questions are essentially created by input from the attorneys who are in the trial. Now, why is this such a difficult task? Generally, when you have a jury selection and you finally come up with 12 people, those 12 people have no absolute clue who the defendant is, and that's a big benefit for the defense. Why is that? Because the jury is not predisposed or don't have any preconceived notions of who the defendant is, their credibility, are they a truthful person, are they dishonest, are they, I said the same thing three damn times, are they truthful, are they a bad person, do they have a propensity for violence? The jury has no clue who the defendant is, so it kind of gives a clean slate for the defendant. The only thing that the jury is going to know is what's presented at trial, because once they're in panel, they cannot do any unilateral research about the case that's expressly barred by the court prior to impaneling, actually. And so, with that in mind, this is difficult because everyone knows who Sean Combs is. Everyone has listened to his music. They may be seeing a movie or a TV show with him. They may have watched the Tubi documentary on why he did it and what's going on. Every potential juror in this case is tarnished, is tainted in some form or fashion. They've seen the Cassie video. And I talked about this before. We all know, well, we don't know, but I'm guessing because I can see why someone would do it. I'm guessing the Cassie video was released by the feds because it tainted the jury in favor of the prosecution. Now everybody looks at him as an abusive monster, which he is. More importantly, the most important thing, it shows that he is dishonest because when the allegations came up, he stood on business, which was BS, and said that I've never abused her. Then his video came out. Now everybody know that you are a monster and a liar, which is ultimately bad. So that's why the jury selection for this case is a little bit more difficult than what it would be for a normal defendant who doesn't have this celebrity, doesn't have this amount of fame. Now, when I was a young trial attorney, I fancied myself on being able to ask the right questions, being able to effectively evaluate jurors who would be beneficial to my clients and open to hearing out our outline of the facts as we present them. Now, it is interesting because when you're talking about juries, it depends on a lot of things. It depends on who your client is, what they look like, what is the type of charge. Is it a criminal street crime? Is it a white collar crime? What is the background of the jurors? How educated are the jurors? How educated are your client? All of these things that you don't think have that much impact on the overall legal process come into play during the jury selection. Jury selection is essentially the warm up before the game. It's being able to say, we have to have referees. Each side gets to ask questions to determine who they think will be the best referees to referee this fight that we're about to have. That's kind of how I always looked at it. Now, let's dive into this article, get a little bit of background, and then we're going to look at the questions that the jury was asked, why they were asked those questions, and stay tuned to the end because I'm going to give my prediction on what's going to happen on this case. Let's dive into this article. Attorneys wrap first day of jury selection in federal criminal trial of Sean Diddy Combs. There's the picture. This is Diddy over here, got the gray going on. The first day of jury selection in the federal criminal trial that will determine the future of Sean Diddy Combs has concluded, with a new batch of jurors to be considered on Tuesday. 19 potential jurors who were questioned Monday are expected to be considered for the panel and the preemptory strike phase, when attorneys for both sides can opt to strike a prospective juror for almost any reason. That phase is expected to commence once a pool of 45 vetted potential jurors has been assembled. The start of the trial comes nearly 7 months after the once highly influential pop culture figure was indicted for racketeering, conspiracy, transportation to engage in prostitution and sex trafficking crimes that the government claims spanned over 2 decades. Combs has denied the allegations and pled not guilty to all charges. After an introduction from Judge Arun Subramarian Monday morning, prospective jurors were called to the courtroom one by one to review their answers to questions with the court. Lawyers for both the prosecution and defense can make a motion to strike a juror for cause after they've been questioned. They can also call jurors back later in the day for further questioning if necessary. After the parties questioned several prospective jurors, Combs' attorneys asked for a bathroom break. The judge, who seemed inclined to move forward with questions, agreed after Combs told the judge, "I'm a little nervous today," as he should be. Okay, what potential jurors were asked? And we're going to dive deeper into the specific questions. Prospective jurors were asked about their level of awareness of multiple celebrities as part of the jury selection process on Monday. Before entering the courtroom, each juror was asked to review a binder with a list of people and places, some of which could come up during the trial, to identify any with which they were familiar. Subramarian comprised a lengthy list to an appendix for The Lord of the Rings. In court, some potential jurors said They did recognize some of the names on the list, which included celebrities such as Michael B. Jordan, Kanye West, and Mike Myers. Now, these poor celebrities, their name is tied up in this. Now everybody like, man, are they gonna call Michael B. Jordan? No, what they're doing here is, hey, Diddy had exposure to a lot of celebrities. So if someone actually hate Kanye West because they believe that he is says terrible things about Jewish people, which he does or has, um, that could potentially be something that they're gonna look at based on Diddy's association with Kanye West. They got pictures together. They probably did some music together, some things like that. So part of it is, how do you look at these other celebrities? Part of it is, some of these celebrities, they could be called as witnesses. They could be in footage that may be presented to the jurors. How are you going to view these celebrities? And is that going to impact your view of the defendant or your view of how the prosecution is going against the defendant? In court, some potential jurors said that they did recognize some of the names. It is common for jurors to be asked about any names that might surface during the trial. Judges do that in an abundance of caution to assure every potential connection is explored to find jurors without conflicts who can be fair and impartial. The list also includes the name of attorneys involved in the case. A name being included on the list does not indicate whether an individual will testify or even be directly involved with the trial, but it is possible that some of the names presented to jurors could come up during witness testimony. Literally everything I just said. I wonder what he was writing right there. Okay, other names mentioned in court by prospective jurors included Kid Cudi. Remember Kid Cudi? Car blew up. They have apparently testimony of persons who can confirm that that did in fact happen. And I believe Cassie Ventura is going to be called. She's going to be called under her actual name because we already know that it's not going to be a pseudonym, Jane Doe or anything to that effect. And she, if I'm not mistaken, has already made a statement saying that his car did in fact blow up. And I'm going to just bet you, based on Cassie's criminal civil complaint and what we have heard through other complaints, if Combs did blow up Kid Cudi's car, he definitely told her about that shit to flex, because he was doing allegedly all types of crazy stuff to try to show his reach, his power, and intimidate. Young Miami and Cassie Ventura, the government's central witness in the case. Combs was seen physically assaulting Ventura in 2016 surveillance video published last year by CNN. He apologized for his actions in the video. The attorneys did not provide an explanation why any person or place was included on the list, which is not available to the public. CNN has reached out to the celebrities named for comment, aside from Kanye West, who is not currently working with a publicist, manager, or agent. Who was dismissed? A woman who said she watched the ID documentary called The Fall of Diddy, a woman who called the 2016 video of Combs assaulting Ventura damning, and a female executive at a major publishing company who mentioned she'd reviewed a press release for Albie Shore's upcoming memoir. Remember, Albie Shore got sick. There was a lot of underground talk about everybody around Diddy on the deletion side of the game. Press release for Albie Shore's upcoming memoir, which she said includes allegations against Combs, were among those dismissed during the first day of jury selection. Prosecutor Maureen Comey asked the judge to dismiss the prospective juror who watched the documentary because Comey expects at least one person who appeared in the documentary to testify at trial. A man was excused from the jury pool because he said his wife, who was a lawyer, harbored negative opinions of Combs after interacting with him during a court case back in the 90s. I'm thinking that that's probably the J-Lo Sean Poe thing. She found Combs' behavior disturbing, and in general, she does not like him, the man said in court. The prospective juror said that his wife's views wouldn't get in the way of his ability to be fair and impartial, but Sub Ramarian excused him anyway, agreeing with the defense. The charges. Now, we talked about all of that, but Combs has been held in Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn since September 2024. If convicted of all charges, Combs could face up to life in prison. Prosecutors allege that between 2004 to 2024, Combs created a criminal enterprise using his business empire where he engaged in sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. He is accused of coercing at least three women to engage in sex acts with him, at times with male prostitutes during occasions known as freak offs, where the victims were allegedly drugged and forced to engage in sex for days. Authority alleged Combs recorded some of the sex acts and controlled his victims by promising financial and career opportunities, as well as through threats of violence and or harm. He is facing 5 counts in total with charges related to 4 victims, including 1 count racketeering conspiracy as it pertains to victim 1, 2, and 3, 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion as it pertains to victims 1 and 2, and 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution as it pertains to victims 1 and 2. Prosecutors have said in court documents that victim 4, a former employee of Combs, who they allege he obtained forced labor from, the 4 victims that the government identified in court filings has had been expected to testify at trial on Monday. Comey said it had been difficult to get in touch with the lawyer for victim 3, and she might not be called to testify even though she had been subpoenaed. Subramanian previously ruled that 3 of the 4 alleged victims can testify under pseudonyms. The person referred to as victim 1 in the indictment against Combs is his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, has chosen to testify under her own name. Victim 3 has also previously been expected to testify under her own name. Ventura filed a lawsuit in 2023. He settled it fast as hell. Video. Up next, jury selection, blah, 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 blah. So that is the background of what's going on. Now, I'm going to pull up this second article. I'm just going to read the meat and potatoes because I want to go through the questions that the judge asked the jury. We're going to talk a little bit about why some of these questions were important on both sides, from the prosecution standpoint and from the defense standpoint. So let me go ahead and cue this article up. Share screen. Okay, pursuant to the court's scheduled order, the defense proposed voir dire questions on behalf of the defendant, Sean Combs, are listed as follow. What is your age? What is your sex? What is your gender identity? And what city do you live? Who, if anyone, do you live with? Age, sex, gender identity. All of this is important. Age, everybody knows who Diddy is, but I would like to think this is just me. People in my age range are probably more impactful because we are more familiar with Diddy's journey from dancing at Howard University and being a background dancer and in music videos to where he is today. A younger person may only know him from the billionaire status or something to that effect. So age, sex is important. Why? Because there are probably going to be female victims alleged, potentially male victims alleged. Gender identity, I think that's important. If I'm Diddy, and I think Diddy attorney has alluded to this, I saw an article where it says he's saying that he's a swinger. Right now, his defense is going to be, bro, I'm a swinger. I like it all. I like men, women, midgets. I'm into furry stuff. I got a giraffe costume I like to wear. All of that. That's the best route to go when you're considering the charges at issue. Who do you live with? Okay. If you are married or in a relationship, what is your spouse or partner's occupation or employer? How long have you worked for that employer or been in that occupation? What is their job / responsibilities? You don't want police officers. You don't want someone who is a sex trauma counselor. Makes sense. Do you have children? If so, what are their ages? If you have adult children, what, if anything, do they do for work? Again, trying to see who may have some bias that is spread from their children to them. What are their age of the children? I think that's important because this is just me. Cassie, I think, was like 18 and 19 at the time when she first met Diddy. I'm telling you right now, let's just put this in context. And Diddy was not as old as Shannon Sharp, but We clearly identified that there was an imbalance of power. Dads, I know y'all out there. Y'all gonna feel some type of way if your 18-year-old daughter is messing with like a grown ass man in his 30s or however old Diddy was at the time. So that's why that question is actually a very important question, because looking at the age of Cassie Ventura during the time this was occurring, some people are going to look at that. Most people are probably going to look at it bad, but people with children, children who may be younger, they understand the imbalance of power that's going on here. Important question. Okay, are you currently working? Who is your current or most recent employer? If not, when was the last time you worked? Please describe your most recent employment. What were your specific duties at your job? If you are working, what do you do for a living? What are your specific duties at your job? How do you describe your job responsibilities? Do you manage or supervise others as a part of your job? Very important question. Do you manage or supervise others as a part of your job? We're only thinking about this from an imbalance of power, where you talk about Diddy being kind of on the older side of the game, Cassie being young, vulnerable. But there's also another dynamic. There's a relationship dynamic, but there's also an employer employee dynamic. There's a supervisor subordinate dynamic. There are going to be people who are supervisors who say, yo, this dude is clearly abusing his role as a supervisor, a role as a hiring authority by intimidating these people. That's why this question is important. They don't just give a damn about what you do for a living. There's specific reasons why they're asking these questions. All right. What is the highest level of education you have completed? And if any, what college or postgraduate degrees? What are your degree or area of study? Again, for something like this, I would probably want a juror who I would say is a little less sophisticated. I probably wouldn't want me. I wouldn't be inclined as a defense. I would want a juror who went preferably to an HBCU. Why? Because Diddy went to an HBCU. Because he has kind of a thumbprint in that black community. It's stupid. It's a little bit of racemanship, but it is what attorneys do during this line of questioning. All right, number 10, I'm going to read a list of occupational areas. Please tell me if you or someone you're very close to has any training, experience, or specialized knowledge in that area, and explain your slash their experience. Business, sexual assault training, sexual harassment training, domestic violence training, case psychiatry or psychology, security services, addiction treatment or counseling, finance, law or law enforcement. What clubs, groups, or organizations do you belong to or regularly participate in? For example, church groups, professional organizations, volunteer activities, victim rights group. If you have a spouse or partner, what clubs or organizations does your spouse participate in? What do you do in your free time? What are your hobbies or interests outside of work? What if someone on the juror, they are interested in music and they're up and coming producer or up and coming artist? Do you really want that person on the trial with Diddy, somebody who could potentially influence their career? Again, these questions are there for a reason. Do you use any social media platforms? If yes, which ones? How do you get your news? What, if any, newspapers, magazines, website, online news services, or publications do you read most often? Do you listen to any podcasts? If so, which ones? His attorneys are well aware of the podcasts who have been dragging him through the mud and have been interjecting their opinion, and those opinions are not based on facts that can be substantiated and or corroborated. So if you listen to, like, oh man, I get most of my news from Tasha K. No shade to Tasha K, but you probably don't want that person as a juror if you're a defense attorney. Okay, I'm going to read three group discussions making styles, and I'd like you to tell me which one comes closest to the way you make decisions. Strongly express your views to get the outcome you believe is best. Participate in discussions to try to help build a consensus. Listen and follow what you think the majority favors. Do you believe you make most decisions based on intuition or the examination of facts? Do you have any personal experience or opinions about drug or alcohol use or addiction? If yes, what is that experience? You're going to hear about drug and illegal alcohol use in this trial. Is that going to be difficult based on your experience? The defendant in this case is a wealthy celebrity. Do you have any opinions regarding wealthy individuals that would affect your ability to serve as a fair and impartial juror in this case? This is not the climate for somebody to be looking for favor about wealthy celebrities, boy. These economic times when people robbing Peter to pay Paul, hey, rich people are generally frowned upon. Famous rich people are probably more so frowned upon, especially someone like Diddy. I'm just saying, it's not because he's famous or rich. It's partly because of that, but it's also partly because that he just has facts out there to show that he might not be shit or ain't shit is the proper term. All right. Next up, do you believe that wealthy people get away with things that less wealthy do not? What kind of music do you like? At that point, uh, how often do you listen to music? Do you have an opinion about hip hop, rap music, industry, artists, and the genre? If so, what is it? Those were the questions that were posed to the jury, the first group of jurors that were tasked. I believe 19 made it out of today. They come from various areas in New York. I saw Brooklyn, I saw Manhattan, I saw the Bronx. They're going to narrow the pool down to a group of about 45 people and select 12 jurors to serve, some alternates, and that's going to be it. So that's just the background of what was going on with the jury, the jurors, day one, the selection. Now, I think this is going to end badly. This is my prediction. If you tuned into this part, put I don't know, is it a gavel emoji? If it's a gavel emoji, put that. If not, just put a thumbs up emoji. But this is kind of my prediction. We know late last week, a report came out that Diddy turned down a plea. We don't know the terms of that plea agreement. I'm suspecting because he could potentially be looking at spending the rest of his life in prison. I'm guessing the plea agreement was probably for somewhere between 20 to 25 years. At this point, I think that he has no choice. For him to give up his livelihood for 25 years would be the equivalent of spending the rest of his life in prison, I think. So I knew he was going to go out fighting. I mean, let's just be honest. This dude said he never hit a woman. He never abused Cassie. He stood on social media and said it was a lie. Then a video came out showing that, in fact, he was an abusive monster. This person is someone who lies because they think that they can get away with things. They think they can get the outcomes that they want. There are generally two types of people who go to trial. Person number one is someone who has a very strong, either legal or factual argument to go to trial. Person number two is a person who I'm gonna make them earn it because I'm gonna just make them earn it. They're gonna have to earn it. Yeah, you might throw a third person in there, arrogant person, but I kind of throw them in the category number two. So I think this is going to end really bad. Um, I think that they are going to have more than enough evidence to be able to get their convictions. Mainly, I think those convictions are going to come from the sex trafficking. I think that those convictions are going to come from transportation for services of prostitution. I think those are going to be the underlying offenses that the feds use to seal up this RICO charge and get a conviction in a nice bundle. That's my take. You all let me know what y'all think in the comments. And y'all let me know what y'all think about those questions. Good questions, fair questions. As always, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. I'm very grateful and appreciative. Y'all are loved. Be blessed. Be safe. Peace.